Welcome to this installment of Coffee with Callisto. I'm Paul Aguilar, and I'm here with my colleague Eva Kennedy, and today we're going to learn a little bit more about her. So Eva, can you start off by telling us where you're from and when you first started playing an instrument?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, and I started on violin when I was 4. So my parents started me very, very young. I don't have any other musicians in my family, but they've always been very supportive. And then I switched to viola when I was 16 because I was in a quartet actually that had 3 violinists and somebody needed to play viola. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to learn how to read alto clef, but it ended up really not taking that long, and then I kind of never looked back.
Awesome. And when would you say you first knew you wanted to be in a quartet or maybe just in a professional chamber ensemble?
Yeah, so I was very lucky to play in my very first chamber ensemble when I was 7. So I was really young. It was through a program called Chamber Music Connection in my hometown. And I right away just thought that it was the most fun that I'd ever had in my life. I actually remember that first ensemble very vividly. And then I was really hooked after that, and I just continued participating in the program all the way through elementary, middle, and high school. Got more and more serious as I got kind of into high school, started doing competitions and stuff like that. And honestly, like from childhood, it was something that I always kind of knew that I wanted to do. And especially as I got more serious about it later in like middle and high school, I just always knew that I wanted to be in a string quartet. So it feels really crazy to be doing exactly what I always wanted to do now, and so I feel really extraordinarily lucky to get to do this.
Wow. Yeah, I think all of us have somewhat similar backgrounds where we were able, very, very grateful to have chamber music from an early age and just build that love for it.
Yeah,
early on.
definitely.
So that's awesome. What's something that you didn't expect about being in a professional quartet?
I think maybe some of my colleagues have said this as well, but one thing that I definitely didn't expect was the amount of administrative work that goes into making the string quartet function. So obviously rehearsing and performing are the biggest and most important parts of our job, but there are also many emails, a lot of booking flights, booking rental cars, booking Airbnbs, being in transit, managing the website, managing social media, just all those sorts of things really add up. And I also didn't expect how comfortable we get on certain pieces of repertoire. So I know that you had mentioned this where we have this wonderful opportunity where we get to perform a lot more than we did as students, and we also get to play certain pieces of repertoire over and over again, and that's something you don't usually get as a student. It's kind of like you spend one semester on a piece, work really hard on it, play it once, and then it's kind of over. And for us, like we have some staples in our repertoire that we have performed dozens and dozens of times, and you get so much more comfortable with a piece of music when you have that experience, and so that's something that I didn't necessarily anticipate, but I really enjoy.
Definitely. Maybe that segues into this next question, which is there a piece or a passage which, even though you come back to many times, still makes you nervous?
I mean, this is a classic example. 59-2, Beethoven Opus 59 number 2, is a piece that we have performed maybe the most often out of any of the pieces in our repertoire, and I still get nervous for that passing off section in the 4th movement.
Definitely. Where
everybody has ba-da-da, 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 ba-da-da sequentially, and if you miss yours, there's a hole. And that has happened to us before. I'm sure it's happened to anybody who's played that piece that much, but that's a really scary example of something that no matter how comfortable we get with the piece, I always worry about that spot. Always glad when it's over.
For sure, and just kind of thinking about performing in general, I noticed as I began to perform more that it wasn't necessarily that performing was always easier. Sometimes it was, but what definitely got easier was the willpower to just do it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I definitely feel that way about 59 number 2.
Yeah, I think that piece is really interesting to think about because I think what comes with performing a piece a lot is kind of knowing when you really have to focus. I think the first time you perform a big piece like that, you're nervous for everything, and it's really mentally exhausting because you feel like you have to be 100% focused for every single note. And then as we performed it a lot, there's some places that I get pretty comfortable with that, I'm pretty used to the way we play them, and I feel pretty reliable that they'll go the same way every time if we want them to. And then there are some sections, you know, that you have to focus every single time. And I think that spot that makes me nervous is one of those places where you can never afford to just like, oh, I'll play it by ear. I know where it is. Like, I have to count every time in that section.
Absolutely. Is there something that you find unique about your role as a violist in the quartet?
Yeah, I mean, I think each role has its own, you know, unique challenges and perks. I think a lot of challenges in the viola part are kind of similar to what Rachel said in her interview. You know, I think with the melody, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with the melody, you kind of know what you have to do to make it sound the way you want it to sound, which doesn't mean that it's easy. But I think with the inner voice parts, a lot of times, in order to get the part to contribute to the overall sound of the ensemble in the way that you want it to, you have to kind of do different things to it than you might expect. So use a lot drier articulation than you think you need to, or use really vast differences in dynamics that you wouldn't do if you were, you know, playing by yourself, or little things like that. And I think those are definitely interesting challenges, but I really enjoy that type of kind of problem solving as well. I also really love the way the viola kind of bridges the gap between the cello and the violins. I love the sound of the viola. I love the C string. That's what kind of kept me on viola once I switched. And I think that the sound of the viola really adds a lot of richness to the ensemble, and that's something that I really love about playing viola in the quartet.
Absolutely. I completely think that the inner voices of a quartet are perhaps the unsung heroes of the ensemble that make so many things happen that most people don't realize behind the scenes. And
yeah.
Like you said, you really have to be a chameleon and be so many things,
right.
And match so many different people and do all sorts of things, again, that, you know, to have the final result you wouldn't expect that you have to do. So
right.
It's a very complex job, and I have all the respect in the world for what both of you do in the inner voices. What is a favorite place that we've traveled in the quartet?
I've really enjoyed our travels to France, just because I did a semester as an exchange student in Paris in my undergrad, and at the time, I mean, it was an incredible opportunity, but at that time I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, when am I ever going to get to come to France again? Like, I really better soak in every minute of this.
Right.
And then so it's been, especially the very first time the quartet went to Paris, that was a really cool kind of full circle moment for me. I also really enjoyed spending time in Banff for the competition. My dad's whole family is from Western Canada, and my dad lived and worked in Banff when he was my age, so he got to come and kind of show me around his old stomping grounds, and a lot of members of my family who had never gotten to see us play before were able to come and see us at the competition, so it was just really special to get to share that with them.
That's wonderful. So of course we have just completed our very first Bartok cycle this past season, which is really exciting, and it was a wonderful journey that we went on. If you had to really quickly rate the Bartok quartets from your most favorite to least favorite, if that's possible, what would that be for you?
1, 5, 6, 4, 2, 3.
Very good.
I stand
All
by
right.
that.
Okay. When we go to a coffee shop, what do you order?
Always a latte.
Consistent.
Very consistent.
Is there a performance fail story that you've experienced or want to talk about?
Yeah, so Paul and I have kind of a
Shared
double
experience.
whammy, and this is a story that we've told a lot, but this was at the Melbourne competition in summer 2018, I think was when we were there.
Yeah.
So it was only our second international competition, so we were really nervous. We wanted everything to be perfect. This was in the opening round, and we were playing Bartok 6. And we had worked super hard on it to get everything to be perfect. And then in the middle of the second movement, my D string peg slipped. And the string didn't break. If the string had broken, I probably would have stopped. But I made the decision in that moment to keep going, but the string was like loose and unplayable. So I had a moment of total panic. I think everybody did, because everybody heard it. And then I spent the rest of the movement, and it's a really difficult movement, trying to play, dropping all my double stops, trying to like invent new fingerings up the G string. Felt like all the intonation that we had worked so hard on, these specific articulations, like everything just went out the window, and I was just like trying to hold on to get to the end of the movement.
Right, and of course the sudden change in tension in the peg box.
Everything else went kind of out of tune.
The other strings off as well.
And that's just like not the way you want to feel. You want to feel like you're trying to play your absolute best, and to just like feel like you're just trying to get through it is a bad feeling. Got through the movement, tuned the string back up, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I can just redeem myself in the third movement and play really well. And then within like one line in the third movement, the peg slipped again, this time just down a half step. So then I spent the rest of that movement trying to play everything just on that string up a half step. It was so stressful, and I just felt like, I mean, the worst part about it was I felt like it ruined the whole performance, and we had come all the way to Australia to play this competition, and like I felt like it had just like wrecked it. I was so upset. I think that's the only time I cried after a performance. We were all really upset. And then we had another like recital in that same opening round a couple days later, and I think we all thought if we can just like play it, if we can just play perfectly, like maybe we still stand a chance.
Yeah, and I remember
let Paul take it over.
The tensions were very high.
Tensions were high.
Preparing very vigorously for that second recital.
We were like, everything's on the line here.
And it was I can't remember which day, say it was a Thursday, and we were supposed to play at 10 in the morning or something, and on the night before, we decided to go to market just to take a break, clear our minds, and we got food from a food truck, and I didn't sleep at all that night, and felt very sick, was throwing up, and just feeling terrible,
and we had to get Paul up in the morning.
We had to go and play the concert. He
still looked green around the gills. I really thought that he was going to throw up on stage. You didn't?
Yes, but it felt terrible, and we played three works on that recital. Yeah, I don't know how I got through that performance, just adrenaline and
just the absolute necessity.
We just had to do that. We had come all the way to Australia, and you had to do what you had to do.
We came all the way to Australia and played probably our two least favorite concerts ever.
For sure, how
in
we
terms
felt.
of like the way that we felt on stage.
And then I went back to the accommodations that we were staying at and threw up and tried to sleep the whole day, and then I got a knock on my door waking me up, and you guys were saying, Paul, we have to come rehearse a Beethoven quartet because we progressed to the next round.
Yeah.
So that was.
So it was both good news and bad news for you.
And I think the funniest thing about that whole story was, we were very grateful to go to the finals and get third prize in that competition. And when we talked to the jury afterwards and asked them about those
they
two
had no
concerts,
idea.
They said they could not tell at all that
they didn't notice anything going
had
around.
happened. So it's very funny.
It was an interesting lesson for us, I think. And I think that's something we talk a lot about now, and something that feels more comfortable to us now that we've been playing together for longer, is like the way that you feel in and immediately after a performance isn't always lined up with how it actually went.
And I think it's important to notice that, we had trained in such a way that we could deliver under those unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
And so that's always an important lesson to prepare as well as you can, so that when things come your way that you're not expecting,
you can still hopefully get through.
You can do what you need to do. Absolutely. In conclusion, what's your favorite thing about being in a quartet?
At the risk of sounding kind of sappy, I think definitely my favorite part about being in a quartet is the relationship that I have with the three of you. I, of course, love the collaborative nature of, getting to really dive into this amazing repertoire together. I feel like we learn so much from each other musically, and really are able to explore this music in a way that's so gratifying. And I also just feel like it's a really wonderful privilege to have three people kind of built into your life who you trust so much, and really kind of make up a core part of what your life is. And that is something that is really unique. I think most people don't have that kind of relationship with their work colleagues. That's something I really value. So that's my favorite part about being in a quartet.
Wonderful, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Coffee with Callisto, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Welcome to this installment of Coffee with Callisto. I'm here with my colleague Eva Kennedy, and we're gonna.
Oh my god, it was
Terrible.
going so well.
No, it wasn't. Okay. Here we go.
Okay, let's just pretend that we're having a conversation.
When would we have that? About this?